Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar. Today's webinar is all about turning NPS into business improvement initiatives. Today we've got a special speaker, Justin Hodgson from Manheim, and he'll be telling us all about what's happened at Manheim in the last 18 months or so and providing us some really good insights and case studies into actually how to turn NPS into business improvement initiatives. Okay, so today's webinar is all about gaining traction from NPS and driving change in your business. And we were talking about a few different things in this webinar, and the first thing is gaining buy-in from the business. This is one of the big areas that organisations struggle with and that Manheim's done a really good job at. So this is all about gaining buy-in from the business around NPS. The second thing is around achieving KPIs around measuring and responding. So service recovery or firefighting or closing the loop, depending on how you talk about it in NPS, is a really important part of the process. And we'll be talking about, or Justin will be talking about, what you do, what you measure, and what are the sort of things you should be targeting and responding on. The next thing is turning actual feedback into business improvement initiatives. So collecting the data is often a relatively straightforward task for most NPS projects. It's turning that data then into initiatives and understanding what's driving customer loyalty that is the hardest part of the process. And this is something that Manheim has done very, very well over the last 18 months. So turning the feedback into improvement initiatives is kind of the core of what we're talking about today. So there'll be a case study on that. And the next one is starting the journey to monetization and growth. So really understanding exactly how to monetize the process and really grow the business. So there are our topics for today. So just a really quick introduction to our organisation, Genro. So Genro is headquartered in Australia. We were founded about 16 years ago now. And we help a wide range of organisations, B2B organisations, B2C organisations. And we help them with customer loyalty management, customer feedback and marketing customer feedback services, Net Promoter Score, customer experience management. So we're really all about focusing on the customer journey and also grabbing the customer feedback that comes with it. And Net Promoter is probably one of the key technologies that we use in the process because we've seen it work so well for so many organisations. Just a quick introduction to myself if you haven't spoken to me or seen any of the profile online. I'm a founder and owner of Genro. Have a deep experience in customer feedback and Net Promoter Score on customer experience management. And my customers include B2B and B2C organisations. It's really important to note that the organisations that we deal with are both smaller organisations and global organisations. We deal with both ends of the spectrum, if you like, and also multi-industry. So we're not focused on one particular industry, but on a range of different industries. And when I talk to people about the thing that differentiates customers that we speak with other organisations is customers that we speak with typically have a real drive to improve their business. So that to us, it's more like a psychographic profile than an industry or a demographic profile for our business. So organisations that really want to drive customer loyalty and their customer experience are the organisations that we typically find ourselves speaking with. Thought leaders are a well thrown around term. Essentially, I've written quite a lot of blog posts around Net Promoter Score and how to use it and how to be more effective with it, and also all sorts of customer feedback processes as well. So that's me. But Justin is the star of today. Justin's a hands-on marketing, product development, and customer experience executive with, and you wouldn't believe it, over 20 years' experience. He currently is the Director of Marketing at Cox Automotive and has worked also at Yellow Pages, Seek, Fairfax Media. And as a marketer, he lives by the words on the screen here. Getting an audience is hard. Sustaining an audience is hard. Demands a consistency of thought, purpose and action over a long period of time, by Bruce Springsteen. I think they're really good words to live by. Now, Justin and his team at Manheim have done just a tremendous job in the last 18 months. And so I was really happy that he would spend some time talking to us about what's worked for them, what's gone well. I'm sure there'll be a few what hasn't gone well, but really helping organisations turn information into initiatives. So without further ado, I'm actually going to hand right across to Justin, ask him to take over from this point, and I will be here to speak. Justin, please take it away.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for the complimentary introduction. Hello to everybody online. Looking forward to spending the next half an hour or so with you, taking you through our business and NPS and how we've gone with it. It's been a great journey. We feel like we're relatively new into the journey, and we're constantly evolving and learning, but I've had great support from Genro in getting us to this point, so happy to contribute back to the NPS community. So what we'll take you through today is we'll get into the key statistics to sort of give you a bit of a background of where we're at with our NPS program. We'll talk about gaining buy-in from the business, achieving our KPIs around measuring and responding, turning NPS feedback into the business improvement initiatives, as Adam said. And we really are just starting the journey around monetisation and growth, but we're excited by it, and we've seen some early wins and some early challenges in that space. And then what is the next steps for us and our program, because we really do know that we're at the start of something quite big and quite important for us going forward. So a bit about who Cox Automotive is. Some of you will know this business, and Manheim and Sell My Car, really the inventory solutions area is the area that I'm responsible for. So Cox Automotive is one of the world's largest automotive service organisations, and we provide service and solutions to our clients at every stage of the vehicle life cycle. Cox Automotive is part of a larger global organisation called Cox Enterprises, which is in media and communications, about a $20 billion company overall. But in the automotive space, we do 7 million vehicles handled every year. We're in 200 locations, 46 billion transactions annually, 40,000 clients and 33,000 team members. So it's a really large organisation, obviously. But in Australia, we've got Manheim Sell My Car. We bought Cars Guide from News Corp last year, and we bought Dealer Solutions at the start of last year, which is a software development company in the automotive space. And Xtime has joined the stable as well. So that just gives you a bit of a background of who we are. Some people will know us, and some of you won't. So just to get into a little bit of the key statistics. We've sent out about 40,000 surveys. We started on the 2nd of May last year. We've received about 10,000 responses, so a 24% response rate. And we've had about 5,000 comments, which surprised me. I didn't think we would actually have that high a comment rate, which is quite pleasing, although some of the challenges that go with that is our comment rates are a higher correlation against our weaker performing areas, which kind of not surprising. But we really do treat each of the pieces of feedback and the comments really valuably. So Adam, over to you for the poll.
Okay, so we've got a poll here that we just want to talk about service recovery and case assignments. So can everybody just spend a few seconds just identifying which of these different areas, or which of these, I guess, different groups do you report your service recovery, case assignment and close rates? So service recovery in this context is where you are getting feedback from a customer and then going out and calling that customer and talking to that customer, resolving their issue. And then how often do you report that information in your management reports? So we're just going to wait a few seconds till we get a few more people voting in here. And if people can just keep voting, we'll probably wait a little bit longer. Looks pretty good. I think it's 5 more seconds and then we'll probably close out the poll and then we can look at the results. Okay. So I've just closed the poll out now and I will share the results with people. So kind of interesting that about 40% of people here aren't reporting their service recovery, case assignment and close rates at all. Some small percent are doing it, about 10% are doing it quarterly, and the other big chunk really are doing it monthly or weekly. So interesting that that a lot of organisations, or a good proportion of organisations, aren't reporting this information at all. And it's really important information, and I'm going to hand back to Justin, and he can explain how it's done at Manheim. Justin, it's back to you.
Cool, thank you, Adam. So the next part of the key statistics is around this, around the concept of cases assigned and closed, and we're operating at an 82% KPI of cases assigned within 24 hours by the response team, and 90% of cases closed within 72 hours. We set ourselves targets of 80% and 90%, so we're right on target with those areas, and that really has only been possible through a lot of focus on managing the operational components of the NPS program. Simon Pert is the business owner that has been allocated into this project at Manheim, and he manages this on a daily basis to ensure that we hit those KPIs in those areas, and he really does manage it very aggressively, and it is one of the areas we're really hard on people in relation to this program. If we don't have the cases opened, assigned, closed and reported on, then we can't do anything with the feedback. As you can see from the note at the bottom there, the response team replies to all scores between 0 and 6 and all comments within 24 hours, either by phone or email. And we really attempt to contact everyone by phone first, and we really only resort to email as a backup. We really want to get the conversation going with our customers, and we treat it as either a service recovery exercise or really looking for feedback on how we can improve, and we take that process very seriously. So Adam sort of talked about probably, the reason that we're probably here having this conversation with you, and why Adam invited us along, is what we've been able to do in converting that feedback into completed initiatives. And this is at the end of June, these statistics. But in 2016, we completed 18 initiatives, both large, medium and quick wins. But we're up at around the 49 initiatives so far in 2017. And then really there has been a lot of growth in the quick wins, and we'll get into the detail around how and why that has happened. But it's been really fantastic to see the engagement of the business to drive that, that performance improvement this year. Wasn't really going to touch on the scores much at all. We really did grab hold of Adam's mantra of not focusing on scores, and we really don't talk about the scores a hell of a lot inside our business. It is something that we monitor, obviously, but we don't really talk about it and communicate it too aggressively. But this statistic probably captures it better than any, is that that last month our NPS score was 34 points higher than our lowest ever, so our low water mark, which occurred for us in month 2. And so that for us, to see that sort of growth, which was really encouraging for us. We had one example though, where we had one division that was performing really poorly, and we were seeing some really strong trends in their customer experience, their customer service, feedback. And what we noticed out of that was, out of those trends, that it was just within 2 touch points within a particular division in a particular market, and they were operating at about 70% lower than all the other divisions and all the other sites related to that division. But just by dealing with that and talking to them about that feedback, we saw them reach the same levels as the other divisions and the other departments really quickly, and actually overtake them within about a 3-month period. And for us, that was a really quick early win that's really gained us some traction and support around the business. And that was really valuable for us to get a quick win, just not even implementing an initiative to drive the scores up, but just focusing on the customer experience, utilising that data. So the next slide, I really sort of touch on how do we gain buy-in from the business, and it's a really interesting process, and I'm sure that you'll all recognise this diagram, and you'll follow something, if not exactly the same, but something fairly similar. So like everyone else, we send the surveys out to get a response. We assign that response to a team member and close the transaction, but we don't send it to the people directly involved in the transaction. We send it one level up. And that just allows us to have a really good conversation with the customer without any personal recrimination or hurt feelings in relation to why they've given that feedback. Then Simon gets involved and he manages the responding, closing and tagging processes. And then I come back and get involved in regards to the workshop process for driving the initiative prioritisation, and we'll get into that soon. But probably the two parts of this this slide that we'll touch on now is the last two steps. So we really did integrate the NPS results into our monthly business reports. We did this in our monthly financial reports in Australia, and we also report up to the USA, and we've put the NPS report and key comments into that report back to the US. And we've also made it a staple of our town hall meetings in our intranet to really get buy-in and really communicate the results and have people understand that this is more than just a customer service survey. This is an integrated, integral part of just how we do day-to-day business these days. And lastly, a really crucial buy-in from the business came in the form of ensuring that everybody was personally named in the comments received a nomination in our MVP awards program. So people really have put a high value on these nominations because they've come from our customers, and that's been something that we've seen. You know, people coming back to us after we've nominated them or their manager has nominated them as a result of the feedback that they've got, saying, you know, this is the first nomination I've ever received. In a lot of those MVP programs, you get people nominating because they've done a favour for somebody else within the business, and the people that actually are right at the coalface doing really good jobs for your customer kind of get left out. But this program has been fantastic for that, and actually one of the annual winners, 70% of his feedback into the MVP program came from our customers, which was a great result in the first year that we ran the program. So the next part that I'll touch on is around how we've achieved our KPIs around the measuring and responding. And as I was touching on before, we really do put a significant amount of focus on making sure the program's running efficiently, and we're making the most of every piece of feedback. And probably the best way to describe it is we treat basically every piece of feedback like a sales manager would treat a valuable sales lead. And we sort of see that as from a transformation perspective, the feedback is exactly like a sales lead. So Simon, as I said before, is really hard on our staff members, and that's a bit rare for us. We're kind of a soft on people, hard on issues kind of company. But in relation to this, if we don't have those cases assigned, reported on, communicated, and closed, then we don't have anything to really work with. And so they're really held to account to hold up their end of the bargain within a really appropriate time frame. As I said before, we're 24 hours and 72 hours for assigning and closing. However, when it comes to the feedback and managing that feedback, we really do take a much more considered approach. So one of the things with Simon, our business owner, is a really high level of EQ. And what that allows us to do is make sure that we don't use the feedback to discipline staff. And it's a really important part, because what we found is there's always two sides to every story. The analogy that the customer is always right is just not true. It doesn't always hold. And we've really tried to use the feedback as a training opportunity rather than a disciplinary measure. However, if we do see trends over a period of time, then we do go to the manager and we kind of do a train-the-trainer approach with the manager to teach them how we want it to be handled and how that manager is to communicate this feedback to the staff member. And we got some really good results out of that, as I said earlier on, in one of the markets, in one of the divisions. What that's meant is that this approach has really meant the teams have really embraced NPS. They've looked forward to talking to our customers to resolve the problems, and that's really prevented it. And they really look at the whole approach to this is kind of solving the problem once and not having to deal with it over and over and over again. And there's a lot of feedback that we get from the businesses. We've known that these problems have existed. We've never really had the data to go out and fix them, or to have hard conversations with our staff members that are causing these problems, because we didn't have any data to back it up. So that's really how we've kind of used that around making sure that we're really driving our KPIs around responding and assigning. So the next part is, and as I said earlier, it's really the key part is around turning the NPS feedback into initiatives. And if you get towards the back end of this slide around the business owner monitors assigning and closing of cases, we really get into the tagging and the tag analysis by the business owner, and then feeding that analysis into the process team. So in 2016, I'm going to touch on in 2016 first. We followed this approach, and it really was about as driving a really structured process within that process team, a really centralised process of product development process. And what we've found is that was great for driving really large projects or enterprise-wide projects. And by having a really consistent model around tagging, it allowed us to really narrow those tags down and create the data in sets that allowed us to really analyse that and really understand clearly where our focus needed to be. And Simon's done a great job in that tagging and making sure that we actually converted the feedback into meaningful data for analysis. We then went into spending some time doing some quantitative analysis on that tag feedback and creating groups of initiatives that could be related to each other and therefore potentially used to solve problems or solve problems through similar initiatives. We then presented that back to the process team, and what was really important about that was to get their buy-in around the groupings that we did set up. As you can see from this slide, in our first session, which was about 4 months in, we did our first process team analysis, is that we found about a quarter of our feedback was related to vehicle accuracy, consistency, and the quality of the vehicle descriptions. So what we basically found is we had a really narrow band where we could really make some big impacts in a pretty short space of time. We then conducted a quick degree of difficulty versus ROI assessment to decide on which of the focus areas that we wanted to work on. We based it on opinion and experience because at that time we hadn't actually calculated what our customer lifetime value analysis were to assess the ROI, or we hadn't really investigated in any significant way how big or complex these problems were. But the aim was solely to narrow the focus into 1 or 2 areas to show quick wins and areas of the value to the customer and to the business. Once we selected that area of focus, we went about conducting a root cause analysis on basically utilising all of the forms of feedback that we'd received. The comments really became critical here. And so looking at the comments, we were able to really gauge as to what the problems were. After that root cause analysis was conducted, it became clear that there was about 3 or 4 areas that were problems that if we fixed, we could actually cover about 25% of our customers' feedback, which was a great outcome for us. We didn't necessarily think that was how it was going to play out at the start, but it's exactly how that it played out. So when the guys in the process team sort of were involved in that process and they could see getting down to the root cause and they had these aha moments, that really gave them really great buy-in into the process. And it really, then they served as real great advocates around the business for telling everybody, that this is not something that's going to be fly-by-night. It's not going to come and go, that there's going to be real business change and real improvement for the way we deal with our customers, and therefore real improvement in the way that those guys, their day-to-day work life actually operated. And so they could see that there would be, we'd solve a lot of problems going through this process. From there, we allocated owners for each of the programs of work and ran our usual business case process. We utilised the NPS feedback as part of the data case, the business case inputs. And it is probably one of the biggest challenges, and we haven't solved it yet, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But utilising NPS feedback to help justify customer experience improvements is always a challenge, and we haven't got there, but it did provide us with that there's, in raw form, that there's 25% of our feedback is coming from these particular areas. So it gave us quite a bit of ammunition to get started. In 2017, we made a pretty simple but a really important change to the program. And what we really wanted to do was start reducing the importance of the central process team, Simon and my role, in the success of the program, and really started to try to give it back to the business. We really did take Adam's advice that eventually you'll kind of want to make yourselves redundant in the process. And we really did focus ourselves at the start of this year to start that journey. And so while we're managing the initiative phase centrally, meant that we had a really structured program and we dealt with most of the really important issues first. You know, one of the biggest downsides is that we were really limited in our bandwidth to drive that meaningful change. And as you can see from the numbers that were presented at the start of the presentation, we've been able to drive those initiatives and the volume of those initiatives exponentially since we introduced the NPS Excellence Awards program. And you'll see some of the points on the screen that sort of outline how that works. So basically we set up an award to be given to the best site against a balanced scorecard set of criteria. And each month the sites submit a report against that criteria, and you can see that awards criteria on the slide at point 2. A leaderboard, we basically publish a leaderboard every month because let's face it, everybody's competitive in nature, and the healthy competition really drove how quickly we got buy-in from these areas. And every quarter we judge a winner against the criteria and also a judges panel vote. It's pretty tough. We've got really large sites and really small sites, and the volume of feedback that we get via different sites is considerably different. And trying to just use the bell curve without that captain's pick made it quite difficult. But that's you know, we've been able to kind of set a really good balance there. And the first winner was Perth for our awards, and they were wrapped to be the inaugural winner. So we really encouraged each site to set up a cross-functional working party. And so basically what we wanted them to do was replicate the process we'd established in the process team workshops around looking at the feedback, grouping it into the similar structures and data points, using root cause analysis, and we worked with them to help them through that process, and then do some prioritization around what the initiatives were and the ones that they wanted to work on, the ones that they thought that they could implement fairly quickly and have an impact on the business. And since then, we've seen a 9-fold increase in the number of teams looking to translate the feedback into positive change as opposed to the one process team. So 9 times the amount of people or groups of people looking at it is a significant improvement, obviously, in our bandwidth. Now, we still escalate the initiatives that require business cases and significant cross-functional involvement or enterprise level initiatives up into that process team, and we still go through our normal process as well. So we've kind of got the best of both worlds as a result of taking that approach. Now, so we've been sort of talking about all of the really good stuff that we've done and the successes that we've had. Starting the journey to monetization and growth is probably the area that has been the most challenging for us. As you can see from the graph, you know, we've been able to calculate our average lifetime customer value and map it against our NPS scores. But it hasn't really created an output that we can use to calculate the ROI in our business cases. As you're all aware, I'm sure that, you know, calculating ROI for customer experience initiatives is difficult, and we were really hoping that NPS would help us with this. Now, we've still got high hopes for that, and we have a plan to work to the point where we turn these graphs around so that the detractors are at the lowest end and the promoters are at the highest end in each of these business areas. And we're basically, our plan to rectify that is to drive targeted customer engagement based on how valuable you are as a customer to us, based on your average buyer fees. And so that's the plan. And we're really hoping to see some improvement and turnaround in that. We're able to obviously measure some of our initiatives in terms of direct return on investment today. And some of them are driving decreased levels of arbitration for us. Some of them are decreasing the number of inbound calls that we're receiving, which means as we grow, we don't have to put more staff on to handle that volume. Those sorts of things have been really easy for us to measure, but you know, we're really hoping to drive some significant business improvement and customer experience initiatives by building business cases that say if we do this, we can take the average customer from 4 to 10. The volume of those customers look like X, and therefore the value of this to the business will be Y. And that's really where we're hoping to get to. In terms of, so that's the monetization stuff. In terms of the growth and utilising it from a growth perspective, we're doing pretty well in some of our divisions, probably more than others. in strategically driving our online reviews process to help position us during that zero moment of truth that we all go through when buying something from someone that we haven't dealt with before. And so in some of our businesses, we've really got that nailed. In the Sell My Car business, particularly the case. In QIS, we're getting there. And in Manheim, we've just really started that process. But that is really something that we're really focused on in driving the online reviews and in that referrals process and using that to drive our business growth going forward. So that's kind of the monetization and growth. So where do we kind of think we're going to take it, and what do we think the opportunities look like? So the next steps for us for NPS is the seller NPS. So all of our programs so far has been on the buyer side. We're a bit like a real estate agent. We deal with buyers and sellers. And the buyer angle was something that we thought NPS would be really valuable for. NPS for our sellers is going to be an interesting challenge. We actually started it this week. So the first lot of surveys went out, so it's too early to share any results with you yet. But there's promising response rates already. A couple of little bits of trends and very early small sample size stuff, not surprising to us, but actually really valuable because it will further reinforce some areas that we really want to improve. The next area is, as I said a little bit ago, is a targeted campaign towards high value detractors and passives to drive that high value initiatives and enable us to use that average lifetime customer value. It was great that we were able to calculate it. Now we need to start being able to use it. Integrate customer engage into Salesforce. So we're a big Salesforce shop. Utilising it for service recovery, utilising it across the Cox Australia, Automotive Australia customer base, and allowing our other divisions to be able to utilise and understand the experience that customers have had with Manheim and who are the high value Manheim customers that they can leverage that are promoters, and that sort of stuff is really a next level for us, and think will generate really good return on investment across the group. We've just started to utilise it to create the measure of churn and set targets for both buyers and sellers. I think we've been a bit neglectful in utilising it for that purpose, and it was one of the articles that came out recently from Customer Gauge, that one of the case studies that have come out recently that we it was a bit of an eye-opening. I can't believe we missed that, and we should have been doing that much earlier in the piece. I'm not afraid to admit that was something we didn't really pick up on early enough, and we should be better at. And then the last one, utilising it for retention, upsell and referral programs, as I said, around the Cox Automotive Group, and that will come out of that Salesforce integration piece. So there's lots to do. We're pretty proud of what we've done so far. It's been a great journey. The CEO last year at the end of the year in his summary said it was probably the best program in terms of engagement. The number one thing that he felt that he achieved in his role last year was the NPS program, in terms of its importance in the short and long term for the business. And so that made us pretty happy, and it was great that the business is engaged with it the way they have. So that's it for me. I'll hand over back to Adam now for questions.
Justin, just an outstanding summary of what you guys have done, and really quickly too. You've picked it up and run with it in just the last 18 or I guess 19 months now, and you guys have done a really good job. So it's been wonderful just to watch what you guys have achieved. There's some really good questions that have come through. So the first one, excuse me, the first one goes back to the service recovery part of your conversation. And the question is, why is the action focused on the 0s to 6s? And I guess the corollary is are you doing anything on the 7s, 8s, 9s and 10s?
Yeah, well, we really did focus. We really wanted to start using it as a service recovery tool in a very short term. We saw real opportunities for people that had reached out to us and said, we're not happy. And then if they've gone to the effort of telling you they're not happy, then you really owe it to them to get back to them and deal with that. We also respond to every single customer that sends comments to us. and there's a real focus on that area in particular, because if they've taken the effort and the time to send you a comment, then you owe it to them to get back to them. I reckon probably the quickest way to lose a customer is for them to respond, tell you that there's a problem, and you not deal with it. We do send an email out to the 7s to the 10s, and the people that have given us no score, and we send an email out to those guys. But we really want to talk to the 0s to 6s and the comment customers.
We also took off the question of our survey is, would you like a callback? Because there was issues that we saw coming through that we wouldn't want the customer to select no, I don't want to speak about it, because it hurts our service recovery process and doesn't give us a chance to build that relationship and repair it. And we've found, some people that give us 1 or 2 or 3 out of 10, and they're so upset with us, but they're so surprised that we've called them within 24 hours, and we've actually turned that into a positive experience for them as part of our service recovery process. So that's why we omitted that callback question off the survey, and we found it really works well for us.
That was Simon, by the way. I haven't just changed my voice.
Yeah, I was going to say you probably need to introduce him a little bit, but that is the legendary Simon from earlier in the presentation. And I can say Simon's driven an enormous amount, from what we can see from the outside, Simon's driven an enormous amount of this. But he also reinforced, Simon, one thing that I say a lot is that it's easier to turn a 0, 1, 2 or 3 into a 9 or a 10 than it is to turn a 6, 7, 8, 9, or 6, 7 or 8. Because you can really turn them around by surprising them on the upside, I guess.
Just to add to that, what we've really found is not only are they surprised, but our internal staff members have been really surprised by how well those calls have gone.
Yeah.
I think there was a bit of reticence at the start on actually making those calls, but very quickly they realised that these are actually really good calls to make, not tough ones.
Yeah, it's a very common concern initially that call is going to be really terrible and negative, but actually customers are so shocked when you talk to them that it's often, not always, but often a very positive call because you can turn it around for the customer. Yeah. So next question: how many staff are there in your response team? How many people are in that team of people that respond to the 0 to 6s?
About 30 to 40 across the business.
Yeah. We have 2 for each kind of site and division. So if someone's on leave or on holidays, there's a backup, and then they can assign the case within themselves. But traditionally, we've got about 30 or 40 across the country that respond.
And I think that was kind of a trick question. I mean, in that I know that you don't have a team of people sitting in a corner that do all those responses. It's line management that are doing these calls. It's not hyped off to some customer support teams is all they do. This is people dealing in the general run of the business that make these callbacks, right?
We don't have a single staff member that's dedicated solely to the NPS program across the board.
Yeah, again, I think that's a great way to run it. Okay, this is a question that if somebody else hadn't asked, I was going to ask, because you glossed over. I won't say glossed over, but you said we tagged the data and we just did it. I think actually a lot of people have problems with that piece of detail. And the question I've got here is, Justin, just going back a little, when you sit down and synthesize the key themes from the feedback, how specifically did you do that, other than reading all the comments verbatim? And who do you include in that process? So what actually goes on in those tagging meetings?
Yeah, so the Simon really handles the tagging on a almost day-to-day basis, managing through that process of monitoring, making sure they were closed. He's going back in constantly and tagging against the appropriate level or the appropriate area. And we've been very, very considered about only setting up to 15, no more than sort of 15 to 20 tags, and there's only one person that does it. So we thought about allowing the response teams or the managers to tag their own, and we very quickly realized that was just going to create a mess of the data spread across a whole range of areas that were going to be impossible to analyze. So having that one person just consistently applying the logic in a very consistent format against those tags has enabled that process around taking that data into those meetings and having some really valuable, clear conversations that the data can support really easy. There's probably there's probably about 2 weeks of work, maybe 30% of the time prior to that meeting, where Simon and I are both going through and trying to make sense of those tags and that data to bring a clear story into that process team meeting, so that we can really get down to the business of, do we agree that this is where it is? And we encourage all of the process team members to look through it themselves and get a sense of whether there are, they agree with the groupings and the correlations that we're bringing to the table. And then we really just try to bring the top ones to that group, and then really get stuck straight into the analysis of, what is the return on investment, how difficult are these to solve, and what are the root causes that are causing those problems. So there's quite a bit of work there. It's not easy, but I really think that at the heart of making it viable is having that one person doing the tagging, getting really consistent in that feedback. We do monitor and read all of the comments though, because they're like gold, and you can't underestimate the value of those without even just thinking about them in terms of the groupings that come from the tagging, because quite often there's multiple problems that are mentioned inside the one comment set that is valuable.
I think there's a couple of really interesting points that you made there, and it's I think it's fair to say that there's no easy way, there's no shortcut, there's no push a button, it just happens automatically and you don't have to do the work. You really have to do the work, look at all of the comments, read them, tag them, do the pre-work before you sit down in those root cause analysis and those action team meetings.
Yeah.
So,
if I
no shortcut, right?
Yeah, there's no quick win there. If I could have one dedicated resource on this program, it'd be a data analyst, and just have that person just poring over the data, looking for the correlations, looking for the causality. I reckon we could really take it to the next level if we had that. Even if we had 50% of one person's time on an ongoing basis, would make a world of difference on where we could take this. And it's definitely something that we'll be pitching going forward. As a lot of the initiatives we've been able to do have been low cost, a lot of process improvement, but with not a lot of serious investment. But to take it to the next level, we're really going to have to get serious about that data to back up those business cases to enable us to spend significant amount of money in areas where people would normally have agreed to spend the money without the data to back up what we're saying.
Yeah, when you want to spend money, you have to have the data. You just have to bring it with you. There's no choices on that stuff. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's like there is no shortcut. You have to do the work. There's no kind of magic potion you can take. So another question. So question says, I'd be interested to know how Manheim engaged operational and frontline staff to take significant time out of their BAU activities to work on so many improvement initiatives.
Yeah, look, it's been a challenge, and there's always a battle for resource and battle for time. One of the things I think that has really helped us is the process team. Adam, you did a great job in engaging that process team early on. They were really committed. They could, through the root cause analysis and the data analysis that we did in the first couple of months, they could really see the correlation between the feedback we were getting from customers and how we can make people's lives better. And by making our customers' lives better, in turn making our staff members' lives better. And they were really, really strong advocates out in the business to drive that change. We've also had a continuous improvement sort of mentality around the business that is, meant that it's not a huge jump for people to just go from doing their day-to-day job to contributing into process improvement and initiative development. People are pretty hungry to make their job better, pretty hungry to reduce the amount of times that a customer whinges or complains at them. So there's a fair bit of self-interest in there as well. and the data, really reinforces that. And as I said earlier, there's people that now walk up to us all around the business going, thank God for once we've got some data to just help us get some of this stuff fixed, because we at the front line have been talking about this for a long time. No one's taken any notice, and now we're getting it changed. So yeah, I think, if you doubt everything else, you can back self-interest.
Yeah, it's really funny because we hear that quite a lot when I sit down and talk with organisations, and they look at the data. It's like, well, there's nothing new here. Yeah, well, there is nothing maybe new here, or it's just become really crystallised through the feedback that you've gotten when you do it formally. And then all of a sudden, instead of having a couple of anecdotal comments from frontline staff saying customers are disappointed about this part of the business, you've got 50 customer comments that you can put under the nose of the kind of responsible manager and say, here's what customers are saying, we need to get this fixed. And all of a sudden there's traction in the process. I think it's always it was a surprise when customers first started telling me that was what was happening. The frontline staff were seeing real traction because they had customers backing them up, I guess.
And it becomes self-fulfilling. Yeah. You get a few wins early, and it becomes self-fulfilling. They can see that this is, if I invest my time and my energy into this is actually going to make things better. Yeah. You really need some quick wins early on as proof points to get that buy-in and engagement. But once you've got it, if you keep following that process and you have a methodology that you are consistent with, then it does continue.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important in this question of getting people to take time out of their BAU, operational people to take time out of their BAU to do improvement activities. I mean, this is the very heart of things like the Toyota production system and TQM and Lean. It's actually having people on the tools at the front line, the operational folks, taking some time out of their day to do continuous improvement tasks. This is not an additional burden in my life. This is part of my job, is to continuously improve what's going on in my part of the organisation. So I think there's a bit of a mental change too when organisations go through this process and really start driving it. It's a little easier for organisations that have got a production mindset or a TQM or a Toyota production system mindset. It's easier for them to get that, but it's, improving what's going on is part of your day-to-day job. It's not something special that you're supposed to do. All right. There's a question here about, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you, do you use any specific text analysis software in the process other than Simon?
No.
Okay.
No, we do the hard way. We read them all. If we were a much bigger business, I'm sure that's something that we'd have to look at. Our volume is such that we haven't needed to bother. I think that you just have to do a return on investment calculation against how much benefit you think you're going to get out of it versus the investment in putting it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't had to.
Yeah, I think often the human interface is the most effective one in those circumstances anyway. A lot of the text analysis software looks good on paper, but isn't quite as good as it looks on paper.
Yeah, you have to feel it and touch it, I think.
I think, and I've said this a lot, and I know I've said this to you at some time in the past, Justin, it's like, if a customer can spend the time writing it, you can spend the time reading it.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. It's like if they can invest their time, then you can invest your time. It's kind of pretty simple stuff, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
You did brush across one other subject that's sitting in here as a question, and it's about the root cause analysis process. What actual tool? You talked about root cause analysis. How did how did you actually do it? What was the actual task?
Well, we just used the Six Sigma. My background at Telstra, I was exposed to Six Sigma. We really just used the Six Sigma process of 5 whys, getting down into the root cause of the problem from that perspective, joining and consolidating some of those whys where we thought that they related to other areas, and then associated those problems back against that root cause. So you utilise that as a basis for working out how many problems we were going to solve if we actually got and solved that root cause. How broad did that root cause actually spread to give us coverage across some of these problems that were being fed back into us? So, no rocket science in that, but really powerful tool. You touched on TQM. So, yeah, the secret, there's a whole range of traditional business improvement methodologies that you just apply on top of the Net Promoter Score system to take it from feedback to action. And if you do that, they're pretty tried and true methods that produce results.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. The use of something, as simple as 5 whys. I mean, you didn't use advanced statistical techniques, and you didn't have any doctorates in stats and machine learning sitting in the back end of the business. You did 5 whys, which is something you can teach people in about 15 minutes, and use that as the task. So I think that's a really important part of the journey, and it's like something I noticed that you just assume it's like, we just do that. But a lot of people don't kind of have the knowledge to say, well, we'll just use that. And I think that was another. I think there's lots of lineups that have made Manheim so successful in this, and one of the lineups is using those simple tools and just getting on and doing it. That's about all the questions we've got, and I know we're coming up on time, so I think this is probably a pretty good time to finish. I'd like to finish by thanking Justin and Simon for their feedback and the comments around what they've done. I think in the last 18 months, as I said at the start of the hour, or the start of this talk, Manheim has done a really good job of just taking the data, listening to customers, calling them back and telling them that they've been heard and they've changed, integrating into the rest of the organisation. And I really love the fact that in your award nominations for your MVPs, I didn't see one benchmark. There was no, is the highest score across the business. What I saw was our score has improved since last time, or we've fed back and we've the adherence to process, adherence to getting back to customers. So that was really good to see. But I think there's lots of elements that have made Manheim so successful in this. But a lot of it is just getting down and working through the process and listening to the data, running the root cause analysis, doing the tagging, turning it into project meetings, turning project meetings into execution, and just executing on what's going on. I also loved the part where you talked about the value isn't just top line. So it's not just about lifting loyalty. It's like you've seen reduction in calls and all sorts of other cost reductions that have come about through the business improvements that you've done that have basically been driven by customers. So I think just some outstanding stuff that you've done, and I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody else appreciates the time you spent today, because it's been really interesting and I think really educational. So thank you very much, Justin and Simon, and for everybody.
Nice, thank you, guys.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your support, Adam. It's been great.
Excellent. So just to let everybody know who's on the call, we will be turning this into a recording. We'll send out a link to the recording to everybody who's registered. I think we'll also send out a couple of things. There's like a how to do 5 whys thing. There's a blog on our website. We'll probably put a link into that so people can look at that, and maybe 1 or 2 other posts that are relevant to something that Justin's spoken about. Give us a couple of days to get that done, probably Monday by the time we get that out. But thank you everybody for attending. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I've learned an enormous amount today as well. So thank you for attending, and that's it. Thanks for your time, and we'll end the webinar there. Thanks, guys.